3, 2, 1. Anthony Darby here with episode 2 of season 2 podcast. We have a special guest host today in Donnie Jackson filling in for Chuck Henn, and an even more special guest, Cam Taylor, back from Shore Natural. Thank you so much for joining us, Cam.
Thanks for having me back, guys. I really appreciate this.
So when you guys see Cam, you can pretty much assume that the conversation is going to be around genetics, cultivation. You've kind of been our resident expert moving forward in some of these topics, and I'm really happy and excited to have you back on. I know some of the questions and some of the excitement we got from your first podcast was really cool, and it's not often that people are so passionate about making medicine, and very many of those people don't have the opportunities to actually do what you do. So I think from a passion standpoint, people find it really compelling to hear in your story. So
Sure, I appreciate that.
So just remind everybody, as always, how you got into the industry. I mean, it was from day one with Shore Natural, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, like everyone knows that I'd kind of gotten into it prior, just playing around like most people did, a couple plants here and there, and then started kind of taking it seriously in around like 2013, 2014, and I actually decided to take a trip to the West Coast to look for some jobs in the cultivation realm, and sure enough, it didn't really work out, and I came back home with just some seeds and, you know, some hopes and dreams. And actually the medical program in Maryland had started up there in 2015, so, or at least licenses were being announced anyway. So I had just done my whole thing of reaching out to everybody I could. I think I reached out to Mary Pat and reached out to basically everyone who could, and eventually got some feedback from some guys that their daughter actually got a job at the surf shop I managed, and they were like, hey, our daughter actually mentioned you were interested in cultivation. I was like, oh, of all opportunities, like, this is the one that worked out. And sure enough, it was the grow down the street. It's like 7 minutes from the house, and from there I got the opportunity with 2 head growers that had flown in from New Mexico that just were like, hey man, like, you already know what you're doing, and we like what your idea is for the future. Like, do you want to go under our wing? Like, let's be your mentor. And sure enough, those guys had to go home after about a year of being with the facility and go back to doing their life, and I got to be the guy with genetics and vegetation, and I get to kind of do my thing now, and here we are. Yeah,
so what I know about this, and I just want to make apparent, is that you were volunteer at first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when someone listens and goes, oh, wow, he just got to go there, and all of a sudden he got promoted to head coach. No, this dude was just showing up, volunteering to make soil.
Yeah.
No pay, just love, hustle, showed his worth and value and work ethic and competency, and kind of inched his way in. And like oftentimes we find in industry, it's someone who's just like, what do they say, luck is where operation meets preparation, or opportunity meets preparation.
Sure.
And you know, you had already prepared yourself that you were given this opportunity that you can go in and take it, and through really like you could, I know the inside things that happen there. You couldn't have said 2 years ago, well, I think this will happen in about a year, I'll have a chance to be running the show here.
Sure.
But some things went down, and next thing you know, the opportunity's there, and you're able to step up. So I just so many people look at, I got a Facebook message. So we posted, here's how we're going to incorporate this in the podcast. So we had posted a job description for a content writer. Okay. Not even a dispensary agent job. We just need someone that can really help us with like the blog posts that we do and just really writing copy. This guy responds back, let me know when you're looking for a head grower. He's like some hillbilly in Crisfield, Maryland with a mustache. Yeah. He's like leaned back in his Facebook picture. But like, I'm hiring a content writer. I'm a dispensary, so clearly I don't have any needs for a head grower. Yeah. But like, this is the kind of gentleman that feels entitled enough, or like that he should be a head grower. Here you are, like understanding the microbiology of soil and studying and really like preparing yourself, and that's how you get the job. So it's not just about faking it or being entitled to think that, well, I did this, so I should be the head grower, I should be the CFO of the company. Like, if you're that passionate about it, go in, find an opening, and demonstrate your capabilities. And likely, because the industry moves so fast, you know, things open up.
Sure.
Cody, our GM, is a great example. We hired him as a cashier, came in, really overproduced, and now he's general manager of a dispensary. How do you be a general manager of a dispensary? Well, you get hired as a $15 an hour cashier and just blow everyone away with what you're able to do.
And that's the one thing, like, this is one of the few industries where it's like, if you're really passionate, you really do shine, like, you really are just like somebody in the room where they're like, oh, well, that guy kind of gets it.
There's a lot of pretenders.
Oh, for sure.
And there's a lot of like
more
people that are in it for like all the wrong reasons, or they think that like, they see it's so weird that the reality versus like the reality is that there's not a lot of dollars and cents, and that this is an emerging market, and that a lot of the dollars and cents are being put into reinvestment. But like from outsiders looking in, they think we just like print money and like
yep.
And like it couldn't be a far from the truth narrative, especially for a medical program like ours. Like, so I feel sometimes when I see the guy from Chrisfield go, oh, you're looking for a head grower, let me know. Like, that's like so insulting to somebody like you. Like,
well, it's funny you say that, because I have like a bunch of people that I had known prior that had grown, and it's like, these guys grow like quality cannabis and things like that, and they hit me up and they're like, hey man, like, I really want to work for your company. Like, you got any job opportunities? Like, oh yeah, man, like, let me talk to somebody, see what I can do. And they're like, but what's the name of your company again? You're like, dude, what the heck? Like, you're not even going to do the research of the name of the company, and you expect me to think you're going to be, like, dedicated to this craft that I've been, like, super dedicated to for a good portion of my life,
Especially you guys. So, like, if for some reason you're not in Maryland, you listen to this, and you're not familiar with Short Natural, that's absolutely not who Cam represents. They are by choice the craft cultivar in Maryland. They are the smallest boutique style cultivar, the only soil based.
One of the only, I'd say, but yeah, the only organic soil based for sure.
I've toured the facilities and I haven't seen anybody else staying in soil.
Really?
Some start in soil, but it seems like fairly quickly they're moving to
the cocoa and the hydro. Yeah, I do know Colta just did that outdoor no-till, and I'm sure that's gonna be an incredible flower.
So, if we're going to get into my hopes is we get kind of into the wonkiness of flower and cultivation. Let's start with the highest level, indoor versus outdoor. In your opinion, what are the biggest differences? And then, like, as a patient and like as Donnie's directing patients, like, what should we be talking about? Like, what are the talking points around that?
So really, if you're going to look at the two, I mean, they're very different grow styles, of course, and you got very different crops. You have to do crop selection outdoors on a way different level than you would do indoors. Because indoors, it's the perfect environment, 75 to 80 every day, So it's gorgeous. When it comes to quality,
so you're starting off with like the more like rigorous plants,
more hardy. Yep.
And does that tend to put you more towards like indica, sativa?
That can vary. In our area, it puts us more towards sativa just because we deal with such a crazy humidity time. The end of the season, it goes right from like 60% to about 90% humidity, foggy days, and we start getting heavy storms.
And is that because the structure of the plant, the sativas, because they're not as bushy, they do better with the humidity, and indicas are being more bushy plants, so they're going to retain that moisture and be more likely to get mold and issues like that?
Well, the sativa is more thin and tall and arid, so it can just air itself out a little bit better. Those indicas are a little more short, stout, bushy plants. They hold that moisture a little longer. You get some mildew, mold issues, things like that.
Okay. What are some other characteristics or...
It comes to like a quality battle when it comes to markets and things like that. Really like outdoor cannabis, you can't beat that. Full spectrum sun grown. It's just, it tastes better. It's.
Do you see higher terp profiles? Like, do you see any of like do the tests indicate it, or is it really just more of like the anecdotal stories and like consumers will tell you outdoors got?
It's definitely, it's also based on your media too. If you're doing 2 soil grows indoor to outdoor, you'll definitely see way more of a spectrum for cannabinoids and terpene levels for outdoor. It's, the sun, indoor, we're just trying to replicate the sun with light spectrums, and we'll never be able to do that.
Sure. Is there anything to like the color? Like, I remember typically like when I was buying on the streets, if I saw it to be like dark, I would assume that it would be like outdoory. I may have gotten it from
and that's more origin based. Like your darker buds usually your indica stuff, and then your lighter stuff's a little more sativa.
It has nothing to do with indoor or outdoor.
It generally not so much. More, it could actually be a temperature change though. Like something like cookies or some of those like blueberry strains, like they can actually turn purple due to like temperature change.
Yeah, and that's closer to the end of this cycle, right?
Exactly. Yep. Okay. So that last 2 or 3 weeks, you can lower the temperatures to like 60 degrees or so, and what that does is it makes the chlorophyll kind of seize up, and you get these beautiful purple tones and red tones. And so outdoor, you can't always control that.
Like when I'm toward one of the facilities, they were really playing around with the finishing temperatures
Yep.
and how much all that makes a difference. It's crazy. It's also crazy to me when you start to get an appreciation for how the environmental characteristics have such an impact on the flower, and then you go to these like huge facilities and know that if the HVAC is off by 2 degrees here over than here, then like this bud, same genetics, same everything, looks different than this one, and possibly this one died and this one is thriving. Like it's crazy.
And even between that, you know, I'd kind of talked before this with you guys about, you know, certain cultivars are just completely different genetic, you know, like bases. Like we're talking about like fatty acids and things within the plants. Like there's ester and ethyl alcohols involved. So these are plants that are going to, result in different things with temperature, light spectrums, you know, medias in general. And that also comes down to the breeding as well. If someone bred in indoor conditions with cocoa medias and they had an HPS light, it's probably going to grow best if you keep it in cocoa under that same light. But if you take it outside, it's probably not going to do all that well because it might not be good for the sun spectrum, you know? Or if you
those are things that I'm not sure many patients in Maryland think about, all the love and care that goes into these products when they pick them off a shelf.
If I can sound like a jerk again, it's definitely the patients that they say, well, I wish I could grow my own, that aren't thinking about these things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the appreciation that I have. And we all know home cultivars that have done like great jobs under the circumstances that they're given. I mean, they're out there. You guys exist, and I if you're my friend and you are one of them and you're listening, good for you. But when you see these incredibly sophisticated systems in place and the attention to data collection and detail and processes and procedures around how these plants are starting and then what's happening in these R&D rooms, it's so much more sophisticated than any one person is able to do it at their home. That I don't believe that you guys are, if they were actually going to testing and we were having them, it's not the same. But sometimes there is something that is lost, and you brought it up, was just the commercialization of some of these things. So we see that from some of the cultivars out there that they're built for quantity, not quality.
Sure, yeah.
And some of those little subtleties that are we appreciate so much from Shore Natural, they're lost, right?
Sure.
So terps are seen to be the first and foremost, right?
Super important,
like
right?
You show me somebody that's trying to bang flower out very quickly and not paying attention, I'll probably show you a terp profile under 1%.
Yeah, exactly.
And even just the way that it's cured, the drying process or curing process, depending on what they're doing, you can really tell the guys that are. It's not to use a reference, but it's like Budweiser versus like the craft beers. Like you can tell the commercialized products that are just built just to get out mass produced.
Yep.
It is what it is, and they serve a medical purpose. And for a lot of our patients, it's a great option. But for the folks that are connoisseurs in this medical program, they can really appreciate the difference. I mean, even trimming. There's a grower right now in Maryland, and I appreciate the fact that there's a flower shortage, as you may have heard of.
Yeah,
you may have heard of that because I've hit you up like 10 times in the last week asking for more flower. I mean, when I'm calling Eric, I'm calling all the boys. I'm doing I'm pulling all the stops. I don't think that there's a owner of a cultivation that hasn't heard from me in the last 3 weeks. And we basically asked this certain cultivation partner of ours to stop just machine trimming with no quality assurance.
Yeah, just setting it out, right?
The flower is good flower, but it's so unappealing looking, and it's not what our patients are looking for. And we haven't seen a big change in it, and I think it's because there's a shortage, and they're just trying to pump out as much as they can. And like, it's funny because when you came here last time, we had like 70 strains on the board.
Sure.
We had too many.
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't. There was a redundancy issue. We gotta be careful because we're getting too many strains that have similar terp profiles, and we're only selling the new stuff, and the old stuff isn't moving. Like now, I can't keep flower in my store for more than 2 days.
Wow.
Like literally, the stuff that you give me will be gone in 48 hours. And on my Monday mornings, our board looks like it's bad. There's 3 CBD strains and maybe like 3 or 4 THC strains, and we build up through the day.
Yeah, it's constantly coming in. It's constantly being put out on the shelves, but the number of patients that we have come through our door.
We're serving 300 patients a day now.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up, right?
It's hard to keep up. But my point that I was trying to get at with that is that we see these guys just like pushing it out, and so I have appreciation of the fact that they're trying to meet the market's need, but at the same time I have a greater appreciation for the quality and stuff that you guys put out there, knowing that like it's the best medicine in the country. Like that's what I rest my hat on when I go to bed at night, is the fact that I know that when it comes to cannabinoid based medicine, the offerings at my dispensary are as good as anywhere you'll find in the country, and I dare you to come and prove me wrong. I mean, we have GTI rhythm products with cannabis derived terpenes added back in the way they're supposed to be. Curio's cranking out great products. We have tablets, patches, chewables, flower like yours. I mean, the full spectrum of what we're seeing. We have CBD flower now. I mean, we've really gotten good products in place, and I'm just so happy with the products that Maryland has. But I hope that we can get through this flower shortage sooner than later.
And that's what we were talking about with like outdoor and indoor, though. The best part about outdoor is you can always assume that between this time and Christmas, you're going to just see all this wonderful outdoor stuff come out. You know, anybody that's growing outdoor anywhere in Maryland's going to be putting stuff out now, you know.
I mean, you said you guys have some stuff coming out, right?
Everything's chopped down now, actually. So you guys should see some good stuff coming out.
That's awesome. Are you able to reveal anything that we might see?
I'd say the one that I'll just spill, it's like my favorite batch of goji I think we've ever done. It's just gorgeous, you know. That's big OG nugs. It's that balance, like, you know, you guys had seen the one from Curio. They have like a lemony, limonene cut, and like ours is actually like a strawberry, very nice like caryophyllene cut.
So is it going to be Goji OG or is it Goji Viper?
Yeah, it's good. We have Goji OG and Goji
okay.
Viper. Yep. So the Goji Viper was our take on just trying to get the grape in there, and the just standard Goji OG was just something I had come across after we had the Goji Viper. Nice. So it just that was a super funny story. And basically, long story short, when I'd come back from the West Coast and I'd met Chip and Tim, the guys had got the Shore Natural started, I was raving about the Goji OG. I was like, Chip, I had ran into this Goji in LA. I'd ran into it in Portland. Best smoke both times. And he's like, dude, I might have heard of it. When he was leaving, he's like, hey, man, here's a little special pack of something for you, too. And sure enough, it was the Goji OG. Like, it's the most treasured genetic I have just because of that, you know?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like something that, like, it's the gift that keeps on giving, you know?
That's amazing. And that's what's being used now?
Yeah, and that's what's being used now. So you guys can get the strawberry Goji
That's so cool.
You know, gorgeous outdoor batch. And that's the greenhouse team there. It's 3 guys that just cranked all that out. And it's just the best batch I've seen.
So I got to tour the greenhouse because, if I'm not mistaken, the very first flower brought to market from Shore Natural was out of that greenhouse, right?
It was, yeah. It was the R&D and the outdoor.
That would be the Malawi twins. Ooh, remember the Malawi twins?
Yeah,
golden Malawi, purple Malawi.
Yep. The old CD Malawi, right?
Yes. Wow, man. I remember those phone calls.
Oh, me
too.
Hey,
I found 3 seeds in my 8th. Can I get credit for these?
Can I get a free quarter?
My favorite messages were the guys who were like, hey, so what should I expect out of this phenotype of the Malawi? You're like, oh, hopefully something purple, like killer, man.
We had a few of them. And then Golden Tiger.
Yeah.
And then like New Mexico Tim was like, so like for me, he was one of the first people I met in the industry. And he's very West Coast.
Yep.
Is that a fair way to describe him?
West Coast Tim, absolutely.
And I remember him telling me about the genetics. He was so excited about the Malawis. He was like, "We got Golden Tiger coming out, man. It's like it's like Kobe Bryant's grandfather. If Kobe Bryant was Purple Malawi, then the Golden Tiger is like his grandfather." And I just remember being like, well, that Purple Malawi was fiery as fuck, though. I can't imagine what this Golden Tiger is going to be like.
Definitely some Kobe. Like, yeah,
I mean,
man.
And the other thing, speaking of flower shortages, so Malawi was probably, besides Curio, that was the first other strains that we got in. And at one point was like, one of 3 strains we have. And someone comes in and they're like, I'm looking to get like a quarter. I have like raging anxiety. And I'm looking at the board. Malawi. I'm like,
we have nothing, sir.
Go to your street dealer.
Check out these tablets.
Yeah, I don't know what your street dealer's got, but it's probably less racing this year. Purple Malawi. So.
Yeah, and like that's actually, we see sativa and indica on the board, and you do hear the people that are like, yeah, well, there's no real sativa and there's no real indica. That's real sativa. Like that's a landrace crossed to a haze. You know what I mean? Like that's
and the terp profile proved it. So if you didn't think so. I mean, it was pretty high in pining and limonene, right?
Yeah, I'd gotten like I think there was like a high spice rate too, so probably like caryophyllene or like something like that.
Yeah, peppery.
Yeah, man, but that was straight up, right? Like it was just
fire.
Yeah, I mean,
it was like
right to the head.
Which was great because we were crazy. Like I remember, like that was exactly what I was looking for at the time. I was all over that stuff. And just to show you how far the program came, I remember buying the shake myself. Because we still had to pay for 100. We didn't even give ourselves a discount at that point.
Sure.
And but I was like giving myself shake discounts of the purple Malawi. It was like all I could get my hands on. That was those were fun times, man.
Yeah,
I've come a long way from there. So you guys came out with 3 strains: with purple Malawi, gold Malawi, golden tiger, right?
Yeah.
Hollyweed, is that early?
Yeah, Hollyweed, and then the Ghost OG too. Yeah.
That's still a good one.
So that was a funny one too. So that one got lost in the pipeworks basically, and I went out to the Emerald Cup to get a bunch of genetics, and I had re-picked up that exact like Ghost OG cross basically. So I brought that back to shore, re-hunted it out. So we do have that one. We haven't ran it all the way yet, just because we're making sure that it's exactly the same. Hollyweed, yeah, we actually. That's one that may have been outdoors this year too. Does really well on the East Coast.
That was one of the most relaxing indicas for me. Like I don't know why, but like it really, really chilled me out.
That's that Hollywood pure Kush side of it. You know, we kept both phenotypes of it. The G13 hash plant side, which is just really hashy, really potent, can actually make you a little racy. But then the other side of it's the Kush side, and it's just super relaxing. It's very tasty, very earthy.
So like, what does that mean for people that don't understand what that means? So I'm familiar with G13 and Kush, but you're relating to what they are crossed with, correct?
Yep.
And what, like Blue Dream's not Blue Dream like all the time. You really got to look at like what's making up this Blue Dream or what the genetics of it are, and the same name for a plant. So when I say Hollyweed, it could mean two really, like Cam's just describing, two completely separate things depending on the actual genetics of that particular Hollyweed strain. And if it's crossed with G13, which is more uppity, I would say, certainly than Hollywood Kush.
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood Kush is what you would think of smoking a blunt and sitting on a couch and not doing
You're not doing
anything.
much, right? Yep.
No one wrote a term paper. Well, sure, someone wrote a term paper after Hollywood Kush, but there's probably some Adderall involved in that, term paper as well.
Yep.
So that's
So basically that's just like your phenotypical expression. So like Hollyweed would be the genotype of the plant. Then you get your phenotypical expression. The best way is like puppies, you know, like you have a mom and a dad. All those puppies, say you have 6 litter, you know, 3 of them might look like mom, 2 of them might look like dad, and then you might have one outlier that just kind of looks like a random puppy, you know?
That's a really good analogy, especially if you think about like a black lab and a yellow lab, right?
Yep,
like,
exactly, yep.
You have a couple black labs, a couple yellow labs.
And then you get a chocolate lab
You get a chocolate
somewhere.
lab out of there too,
Like,
which you're not expecting. And
then
that happens sometimes too, right?
Exactly.
Because some of the recessive genetics and something that you weren't expecting to be pronounced could become way more pronounced.
Yep.
And that's probably how a lot of this happened, right?
Yep, yeah, that and too, and like the larger sifts. So like, you know, most people buy a pack of seeds. It's like 10 packs of seeds. Like you're gonna have a better chance of finding something crazy if you have 100 packs. You know what I mean? Like people are putting down like 100 seed sifts, like easy. Like Humboldt Seed Company, they just did a 10,000 sift seed. So it's like they're going through and finding what they call unicorns. You know, they had found melons, they had found vanilla frosting, they had found all these things that we didn't know existed, but you couldn't find that if you didn't put down 10,000 seeds. You know, if you put down 10, you're never gonna find those.
Are there a lot of companies doing that now?
There are not a lot like that large. I'd heard about 1 million one going over in Colombia. A guy named Breeder Steve. I don't know how far he's gotten.
Breeder Steve.
Yeah, Breeder Steve, right?
Proper name.
Yeah, right. But yeah, other than that, I know Humboldt's probably the only guys in like North America that are really like crushing it with that.
If you had to put on like your Miss Cleo predict the future hat, like where do you see genetics in like 5 years and 10 years?
Oh man, it's gonna be a weird day, honestly. So we've already actually seen the first GMO cannabis plant just was produced about a month ago or so. It's gonna have THC all the way up and down the stalk and stem. You're gonna be able to smoke the fan leaves. It's gonna be done in like 50 days, like an autoflower. It's not gonna be bigger than your waist, and you're gonna be able to, you know, monocrop this out in your cornfield and let it go. There's not gonna be mold. There's not gonna be bugs. That's the future of cannabis plants. on a economically large scale for these big guys. But
Monsanto comes in and everyone buys the Monsanto seed.
Yep.
And then they make it so that they use a special fertilizer, and if you don't use their fertilizer, then I know
that makes me really uncomfortable for some reason.
It kind of should in a way, and that's the big thing about me. Like,
should we feel uncomfortable?
More so with like genetics. Like if you're someone who's like, hey, like I really like Blue Dream, you're like, that's the one I like, then you need to go ahead and get those seeds right now, because there is a chance you're not gonna be able to get that in the next 5 years, and if you do, it might not be the same Blue Dream you have right now.
How well do seeds preserve? Like, can you save seeds for?
There's guys popping 20 and 30-year-old seeds. You can just keep them in the fridge, vacuum sealed, no oxygen. Yep. I've got a big old tote that my wife's just like, can we please empty the fridge out? We're about to get a garage fridge, I got to do something here.
I love it.
It's funny because Mary Pat and I was talking about like preppers. And
Sure.
like our prepping is really just like run to the dispensary and like
weed
everything
preppers,
else we'll
right?
figure it out from fucking there.
So get your seeds now. If you're even considering growing a plant when it goes legal, just go ahead and think about like, I like the idea of cherry pie. So look for that now. More so now than later, anyway.
Wow. That's really. I'm with you, Donnie. Like that's not something that I'm like, oh, that sounds great that Monsanto is getting in the Wii game.
But that's when you find market demand change. It's like we were talking about earlier. Like those guys are going to be making that market demand where they're going to have the $20 eights that the patients are going to need. They can't afford it, or they're going to have the insurance.
Especially processing and things like that, right?
Yeah, like especially processing.
So would you assume that in the beginning, knowing the market, that most of that stuff just goes right to processing in the beginning? Because I'm picturing like. It's going to be tough to convince a patient to want to smoke a stem.
Slide it up.
But it's not going to be hard at all to tell a processor you have 100% plant matter that you get to work with now, not just...
But that also gets to be a weird point where we think about the distillate market. Like that's like a 48% market in California is the cartridge market. People are just smoking pens, 48% of people. And that's a huge market. We're having this whole scare where we're having additives and things like that. It's like, that at least 40% of those Californians are just not questioning what they're smoking. They don't care what's in that cartridge. So there's going to be a ton of people that are going to be like, oh, yeah, it's just weed. It was $20. I don't care. But then you are going to have your crack
I heard
guys.
it. I mean, we heard the cartridge thing. I mean, dudes called me up, man, your cartridge is $80. I can get a gram for $20. I'm like, yeah, what's in that thing?
Yeah, get your popcorn lung or whatever,
exactly. Do you have any thoughts on the vaping issue?
It's more like it's just like an additive issue. To always be mindful where you're getting your things. Like if you're getting lab tested things from your state, you should trust that 100% because they shouldn't be letting you down if it's tested. If they let you down, then we have an issue. It seems like it's these guys that were just like black market getting pens in that were pre-printed labels that you're like, all right, this has got to be apple gelato because the box said that, and those are the guys you should definitely be worried about.
I think for me, it was a hardware. I think there's a hardware issue.
Sure, the
cheap
the
stuff
metal
coming from
stuff.
China. It's got lead in it. It can't be good.
Yep.
And then of course, the additives. The idea that the kid who couldn't pass 7th grade chemistry's got all the solvent out of your cartridge is not something that I'm going to fully agree with. Yeah. And me personally, I'm sticking to cannabis-derived terpenes. I think botanical-derived terpenes are certainly safe. From what we've seen, they've been proven to be safe. I think the flavorings and stuff should certainly be avoided at all costs, especially with cannabis that has natural flavorings as it is.
Yep.
But for me, I feel safest using cannabis-derived terpene products because there's a longer history of smoking cannabinoid-based linalool than there is linalool from lavender. And there's a longer history of smoking.
So why do we feel like all product that reaches our shelves is not 100% cannabis? Like what's the reasoning behind instilling these botanical terpenes in the products?
Cost.
Yeah.
So it's a cost thing.
So Curio, and this is where you can correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Sure.
But the way that I've understood it, like folks like Curio and GTI, they have such the volume that they're able to capture enough terps from cannabis throughout their processes that they're able. The only difference between GTI's pen and somebody else is that GTI is taking cannabis-derived terps to thin it out, where somebody else is taking like linalool from lavender. It's much cheaper to extract linalool from lavender than it is cannabis. So what you find is like trueterpenes.com, places like that, that basically specialize in these cheaper, much cheaper and much more easily accessible terpenes.
Your food grade terpenes.
Terpenes than cannabinoid.
These are things you could buy right off the internet, right?
Oh, absolutely. Amazon.
And this is how it's presented to me sometimes. So I had a processor reach out to me and say, do you want a pH specific vape pen? And I was like, yeah, I do. What strain? And he goes, go to terpenes.com and pick. And I was like, whoa.
There's too much to choose from. Thanks.
Never mind. Like, and that's exactly the comment. Like, I was just so defeated. I was like, oh, what's my own like personal strain? Like, and then it was just like, and I was just like, that to me, like, I'm not putting my name on that, and part of it's a luxury. Like, maybe if I never had cannabis derived terpenes, I wouldn't even be able to speak this grade, right? But now that I've had it, I do. I mean, we had Manny on here. He describes their pens as liquid flower, and I would argue that it's the closest thing to flower taste-wise that I can get.
I agree.
And I won't I had someone offer me, I won't even call them out, but I had someone offer me a pen that was cleared from the black market, and I was like, no, I'm sorry, like, I don't do that anymore.
I'm good, right? Like,
which it felt weird, but like, the additives that are in there, the way those things are being made, it's completely night and day from our program, and I don't feel comfortable with those products. And then the last piece I'll say about the vaping thing is, I think you need to look at like the usage.
Sure.
Like when we're talking about these nicotine vape pens, and the dudes have like the car battery tied up to their mod rig, and they're blowing out like
the necklace,
looks like a smoke machine. That can't be healthy for you. Like, it's cotton candy. I'm like, no, that's even worse. Like,
right.
What the hell I've seen cotton candy. It's not liquid in your vape pen.
Well, think about this too. This is kind of trippy. Like, so imagine you're like allergic to like a lemon balm or something like that. What if they're putting that same sort of like limonene produce terp in your pen, and you're inhaling that? You're combusting it and inhaling it. And then what happens? Like, you're gonna get a lung infection. You know what I mean? Like, so we don't know
the
how
vitamin E acetate thing. So like vitamin E. This was interesting to me. There was actually a company in California that has a patent for adding vitamin E to their medical cannabis vape pens, but it's not vitamin E acetate. It's legit vitamin E. But vitamin E acetate, which is just a slight chemical variation, it's a fattier version of vitamin E. When you add that to a vape pen, which is meant to be a topical, it's, as Nurse Laura explained it, it's basically like smoking fat. So, like, you're literally, like, putting fat around your fucking lungs.
Oh, my gosh.
So, like, once again, these rig things where they're blowing out huge pieces of smoke, like, that can't be good. And the stuff that they're putting in there, it looks disgusting. And then if you are using even if you're using a GTI or a rhythm pen and it's top quality, if you're going through a half-gram pen a day and you're just fucking hammering that thing all day long, there's going to be irritation in your lungs, bro.
Yeah, dude.
They're not meant for that. Like,
the vape pen cannot be your only means of medicating. It can't be.
I would say that, like, you can see a universal trend in our dispensary that our employees don't use vape pens anywhere near the rate that they used to.
Sure.
I barely ever see you use one. I don't even know if I've seen you use one recently. Like,
yeah, it's just not my thing, man. I've realized over my 2 years in this program that that's just not the way for me to medicate. You know, it's good for somebody, but not for me.
I use them every day, but typically like 1 or 2 times midday as pretty much like a breakthrough to get me through the evening time.
Sure.
In the beginning of the program, I was using them throughout the day. I was substituting like medicating at my house with like using a vape pen, but I found that like it irritated and I've also so I never smoked cigarettes, so I don't like, I have a higher sensitivity to smoke. I can still blow clouds, don't get me wrong, but I have a higher sensitivity to smoke than a lot of folks, and just the water filtration piece for me has always been huge. So like I've never liked. I've always favored bongs, and my rig is water filtered. Like everything's water filtered, and I notice a big difference when I use a flower in a bowl or a vape pen versus water filtered. For me, it's a different experience.
Oh, 100%. And you got to realize too, like, I mean, you guys are a little bit older than me, but it's like we all come from that generation where like it's a ritual too. Like you sit down, you break up some bud, you sit with your buddy or your girl, and you're just like sitting there having a good conversation, and then the conversation changes after the smoke, and like that's something special. Like a pen's great for on the road or at a show.
I think you're
or
talking
something.
to 2 guys that miss that.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Like, You get a little bit. You get a poker night here and there, but like for me, honestly, I'm so busy and with little girls and stuff. Like I've lost that social connection to cannabis, which I mentioned earlier that I've gotten away from flower a little bit. I would argue that if I had that social connection, I would be way more inclined to probably be through that. Yeah. It's weird that cannabis to me has really just gotten about like, I'm so inundated with all this stuff that eventually it just becomes a medicine to me, right?
Sure.
And for me, it's just about how do I medicate the most effectively every day, because my body changes and like my days change. Like I don't have a consistent job where I go to a 9-to-5 office job. I could go in one day and 4 of my employees could be on the fritz. The next day I could go in and it could just be like I find myself like just like what am I going to do today?
Staring at jars, right?
At jars.
Yeah.
So being able to medicate based upon the fluctuation of my day is something that's super important to me.
And that's apparent too. It's like you're saying. It's like if you're a busy person, then the pen makes sense. That's like the marketability behind it. It's a lot of people.
The cold start dab rig. Like for me, like when I get home, it's like I get home, I check everything in, I have the wife watch the girls for a second, I run downstairs. It's like a minute and a half, right? Like I'm opening my jar, I pitch it to the side, carb cap, 13-second cold start.
You're exhaling up the stairs.
I'm exhaling the word up the stairs.
Washing your hands so no one smells it. You're like,
back in the game. And that's another thing is the smell.
Yeah.
It doesn't. When I hit a dab, like, and I run back up the stairs like real quick, but I don't reek like because I take big bong hits. When I smoke flower, it's like Cheech in a freaking. Everyone knows.
Yeah. And I think that too. Like
the loud is loud.
Yeah, and it's like we live in an area too where like it's becoming accepted because we have the medical program, but wait till it becomes like rec. When your neighbor down the street's got 6 plants in the front yard, you won't be so pressed for like smoking time. You'll be okay with taking your time at times.
I went out for the first time like ever. A couple weeks ago to go celebrate. One of our partners got inducted to the Hall of Fame for SU lacrosse team.
Oh, nice, man!
And that brought me out for like the first time ever, and probably like I don't know, maybe 3 years.
Hermit out.
Like out past like 9:30 at night, and we walk out of Mojo's, like a local bar, and it was like, so my first visionary is a police officer, and then my olfactory senses, I'm like, Jesus, like who is just burnt weed, like
oh gosh, like, right there.
But nobody's phased is my point. There's probably
right?
10 people out front, including a police officer, and no one's like on the hunt to find out like where the smell's coming from. It's just like it's to your point. It's already more and more accepted than I would have imagined it to be, and like in Baltimore City and stuff, like it's everywhere.
Yep.
Like you have a nose for it, like you're not going anywhere without smelling like cannabis, and like. Part of me thinks that's great. Part of me has concerns about the backlash in a small town like this. Like I don't want to see it go too far,
too mainstream, right? Like
or even just too aggressive with it. Like
sure.
One of the things that I've always tried to just offer this to people and not jam it down their throat. I don't want people just like openly sparking up on the streets, being like, "Sorry, you don't like my lifestyle."
Yeah.
Hotboxing old ladies and
blowing at your kids.
Yeah, exactly. Blowing in car seats and stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, I think there's a level of responsibility, but full circle back in ADD mode. There is a psychological thing to the process of smoking cannabis, and like that sitting down piece and breaking up the flower. Like, I think one thing that I noticed is the bubbles, the sound of the bubbles. Like, I feel like when I hear the sound of it's like things are gonna be all right. You got about 30 seconds,
takes you to like
a minute
good
and a half,
times, right?
and all of a sudden, like you're gonna get a little feeling and.
I took a tea break a couple months ago, and first couple days were tough for me. Not during the day, but at nighttime. I struggle with sleep issues and
tolerance break.
Tea break.
The tolerance break.
So my first couple days, I found myself right before bed. I'd sit down at my dab rig. I would get a dab ready.
You told me this.
I would heat the banger up. I just wouldn't take the dab. I'd pull on it, and it just that feeling alone, I felt like gave me just a little confidence to. Be like, no, I'm gonna slide till tomorrow and just keep going and keep going.
The natural habit of it. Just you're like, all right, cool. Well, I did it anyway.
It's the person on a diet that says, hey, can I smell those French fries real quick?
Yeah.
Like I just need to smell it. I need to just get it in my system. I don't need to eat any. Just
man. So I could definitely agree that it is 100% ritualistic. For sure.
It's interesting. Mm-hmm. The intolerance breaks are always important too.
The tea break.
The tea break. We talk about that a lot. Just because simple it's amazing how much you can reset your endocannabinoid system by taking a little break. It's something that I think is one of the most beneficial properties of cannabis, as opposed to some other medications, is the fact that when you find yourself and that tolerance is going up and you're unhappy with that, you can just simply cut down. And like, at the point now that I'm using fairly high levels of THC in a concentrated regimen, even just moving down to flower or lower CBD or high CBD, lower THC strains, even without a complete abstinence break of THC, I can notice immediate differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, like if you're the guy that's like, man, like me, like I haven't taken a break in a while, so I try to figure out like what's going to be the most effective way to smoke throughout the day. Like I try to go fruits, or I try to go floral in the morning, try to go like more fuel-y towards like the afternoon, and then I go straight earth, like, you know, kush to go to bed. And you know, that's just because that's my regimen, and it helps me like not get stuck on smoking floral or something where you're like, oh dude, I've like hit like 4 or 5 of these and it's like not doing the same thing. It's like,
so you're constantly changing your constantly changing your strain during the day, so you never get stuck on something.
I do try to keep it in the same like terpene realm. Like I do try to, because I break it down to like 4 terpenes. I think Kevin Jodrey, he's one of the biggest consultants in the U.S. He broke it down into 4. He's like, you got fruit, floral, you got earth, and you got fuel. From there, you can kind of mono break it down from there. He's like, if you start with fuel, you're not going to have a good day. You know, you start with that fruit, you start with that more like, you know, easygoing smoke, and then you get into like those florals, which can make you a little more like up and a little more like euphoric. You go from there until like your fuel would kind of change the tone, because fuel is like always going to hit you hard, you know. And then from at the end of the day, you're ready to go to bed, go right into your earth tone.
I used to always be like, well, always. When the program first started, I actually got to know what I was using. I mentioned in Malawi's, like, I was really, really heavy on sativas, like, first thing in the morning, because I don't want anything that's going to, like, ruin my energy or anything that's going to, like, compromise my clarity. What I found is that a lot of times that was increasing my anxiety and actually depreciating my energy levels and affecting my clarity. And that counterintuitively, going with a hybrid or seeking out some terp profiles, basically staying away from pining.
Yep.
Right, and maybe leaning more towards like a limonene, and even like it doesn't even matter. We might have some myrcene and some beta caryophyllene in the morning, and a lot of it depends like my mindset, right? Like if I'm feeling depressed or I'm like super duper anxious, what I'm trying to explain is that sometimes counterintuitively I'll go with something that you would think would bring me down, but because it settles my mind, my energy levels spike because I'm not like freaking you know, it's easy to get in your own head and to have your own head wear you out and stress you out. And one of the things that the cannabis can do if used properly is can really mellow that out. So for me, it's been interesting to go towards a more relaxing in the morning, because my energy level is high enough. I don't need that. I'm anxious, so I think I need that, right?
Well, it makes sense too, because it looks like you're like me, like you drink coffee throughout the day, you know. So if you're drinking coffee and then you're gonna hit a really serious sativa like a Malawi, like that's definitely gonna mess with you, you know. Like if I go over too much coffee already, I'm just jittery. If you put a sativa on top of that, I'm gonna go hide under the bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like, come 4 o'clock, if I hit that super heavy sativa, or to your point, I hit something with a fuel in it, boom, energy spike.
Yep.
When I need it.
Yep.
And
that's
and
that
then in the evening,
change in terp.
Yeah. And that's pretty much, so that's kind of how I've been. So like for the last couple of weeks, I've had the same morning routine with Shark Shock Shatter every morning, and then in that afternoon setting, I've done everything from some of those TNG diamonds to some of the just different sativa based or more uppity in that mid-afternoon time, and then in the evening at like 9 o'clock, after at least some of the kids are down, run downstairs and sneak and get that late evening where I'm just like, all right, now I can relax,
ready to go to bed, right? Yeah.
But all of us are kind of on this continuation, like treating people with cannabis is not easy.
Oh, not at all, no.
And like, I have an entire dispensary at my arsenal, and I've been at this for 2.5 years, and I'm still learning about myself.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll continue on this path, man.
Yeah. There's new products. There's new cannabinoids I can play with. You know, CBN THC tincture is awesome.
Sure.
But I wasn't talking CBN 2 years ago.
Yep.
I can remember back to like the first set of vape carts we got from Rhythm with the terpene profile on the back, and for a while everything was pretty much the same, but now we're seeing terpenes that we've never heard of before showing up in testing and prominent stuff too. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's like my favorite is like, what the hell terpene is that?
Yeah,
Like,
You're trying to say it right.
yeah.
Yep.
But that's the fun part too. It's like, at what point are we going to start making these monoterpenes and figuring out like, all right, well, what with this secondary terpene makes this? Like, what's fruit punch? You know what I mean? Like, what terpene are you like, oh, well, yeah, that tastes like Kool-Aid. Like, you can't, like wedding punch, our wedding punch, if you've tried it, your mouth just stains with just like red Kool-Aid. Like, you literally can't even taste anything else for like 10 minutes. But it's like, I can't tell you what terpene that one is. Like, and
it's probably not one, right?
Exactly.
It's gotta be a combination.
It's probably like, it really is. And that's what I get excited about. Like, I picture like somewhere like Rec Future where like you would have like almost like a set of concentrates and like you're building like you would like sushi or like
you got a little
mixologist,
you like sit at the bar and you're like I'll have the the Sunset Sherbet Beach.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, a little
Just
bit of
passing
this,
the
a little
list
bit
that you
of
marked off,
Scene, a little of this.
I checked off 10 of these. Take that.
Can I get my name on the board? Like Mackey's, right? Like the with the bomb list. Mm-hmm. We got some people on there.
I wonder how long it'll take for us to see. Now I know we've seen THCA isolate. When are we going to see terpenes available? Like, do you think we'll ever get to the point in the program where we're seeing like a half gram of myrcene, or?
I guess that's in a sense what we're kind of doing, where we're like separating the terpenes and kind of putting, like, you still need something to kind of actually give you the effectiveness, like the cannabinoid level, because it's the terpenes just dry, or actually more of like the direction of just what your cannabinoids are, like
they're like modulators, right?
Yeah, so it's like, I don't think there will ever be a time where we can just like smoke lavender and just be like, man, it's the same as weed. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. To my point, I think like, when are we gonna?
Yeah, I know what Donnie's asking. Like, do you think there'll ever be so much abundance where they're actually able to separate the terps and then put them in a separate product, so that like you're getting cannabis derived myrcene? So maybe I have. Let's picture like I have diamonds, and I want to dip my diamonds in myrcene.
Oh, okay, I get you.
So that you're
like
getting
an enhancer
the terp
in a way.
profile,
sure,
along with the THC. I kind of look at almost food like sometimes like what they say, like deconstructed, like whatever dinner.
Sure,
like that's kind of how I think sometimes. Like, what if we could deconstruct down so I could take a THCA diamond and then take myrcene and take
and mix and match and figure out what works best for you.
I've seen it advertised, of people advertising that you can buy cannabis derived terpenes like myrcene, that it comes from the stems. But I'm skeptical of that.
Yeah, that'd be like scary. It's like the same thing. It's like, do you trust the vape company that you're getting it from because they said it was good on the plant?
I saw the lab tested that product. If we're thinking of the same one, it was like 89% myrcene or something crazy.
Wow.
And the lab results didn't look superficial.
It did not look superficial.
It's like handwritten on there.
There was some I swear to God, there was some handwritten stuff on there.
It's like paint a picture.
And the lab testing, we can get it. Let's get into that for a second. So, lab testing now is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And we're in the CBD space as well. So, in my opinion, it's like, Maryland is so regulated and is so strong that like, there's no issues here, in my opinion, with the labs. But like, when I look at the CBD world and I see what people consider lab tested, it's typically the same manufacturer of that product. So it's not even like a third party or anyone that would have any
objections.
Any reason to say that it's not what it's not.
Sure.
And then even like for us, when we went to go, it's tough. It's tough to bring really high quality products to market. A lot tougher than people, I think, give credit to. And we've been struggling to try to find a really solid vegan CBD gummy that we wanted to bring to the market.
Sure.
As in our position. And so we go to this company and everything's lab tested and it's supposed to be great. And they sent us the freaking lab results and it's just cannabinoid content. That's it. Nothing else. No terp profile, no microbiological testing, no pesticides, no...
Look how strong this stuff is, guys. It's great.
Nothing.
Just do it.
We didn't even try their sample.
Yeah.
I threw it away.
Yeah.
I was like, this is not lab tested.
That being said, consumers watch what CBD you're buying from a shelf.
And everyone's going to say it's lab tested now. Like that's like par for the course.
Yeah.
Ask to see the lab results.
Yeah.
Can you understand them? Can you read them? Like for us, we use Atlantic Testing Labs for our CBD.
Yep.
I wanted to use an MMCC approved lab company so that I could show the exact same lab results that any of the MMCC providers can show. So we use Atlantic Testing Labs. We get a full panel back. They check everything. The results are easy to read. We post them on our website so you can tie your bottle back to that test result and have confidence that it's what it is. Most companies aren't doing that, man.
It's crazy too, because a lot of these labs are just making it so much easier for you. You know what I mean? Like there's a couple labs that have hit us up that are doing like apps now, where it's like you can just like as a consumer or patient be like, okay, I just bought the Goji Viper from Shore Natural, and you can look up the exact batch and see the exact test results, all the way down to whatever terpene that you just don't ever see on the COA. You know what I mean? Like the labs are making it easier than ever.
QR codes and all that stuff.
Yeah, so it's like for people to not have things tested properly, it just doesn't even make sense.
So I feel really confident in the Maryland labs. And I know that there was a learning curve, especially in terms of variances. So in the very beginning, you guys could send the same flower to two of the approved labs, and you guys were getting fairly decent,
way different stuff,
different results. I feel now that they've calibrated kind of in tune with each other. Are you seeing that as well?
Absolutely, yeah, because we do like to get stuff tested twice. Last time I was talking to you guys, we had gotten like a 35% Hollyweed back, and we were like, that doesn't sound realistic, guys. Like, let's send it to a different lab. So it's like, and these guys sent us the same exact results, and the terps were a little off, but that's because it had sat a little longer, and so it's like made sense. We were like, this,
That's awesome. I think, I think Maryland patients should be really confident in terms of the fact that the labs are doing a really phenomenal job, and that Maryland has some of the strictest requirements. I mean, we can't probably get into too many details, but I know that you guys lost an early batch to something that was so minute, and that and almost every other state wasn't even a qualified.
Oh yeah, like the chromium thing or something. Yeah. So the crazy thing about that is California went through the same loop, and New York went through it we went through it about 10 times the rate that New York went through, like the testing parameter.
It was 10 times higher than the next equivalent state testing.
So if you actually go to the store and you pick up a strawberry on the shelf and you measure anything on that, like, and got a COA, that would not pass Maryland testing. Like, you couldn't take that strawberry home and you know what I mean? Like, that's how strict our testing is.
Wow. I wish people were as thought-provoking in the requirements for their food as they were for their cannabis. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that we're in a highly regulated environment, but some of the things that people kind of complain about or have red flags drawn, I would be like, check your food. Yeah. Because they,
what's your diet?
That's what these standards are from, right? Like, what chemicals are in there, what preservatives, what pesticides were being used on your green beans that were grown. Like, you think they're using bugs to eat good bugs when they're trying to grow thousands of acres of soy? No, like.
Yep, yeah, and it's what we were talking about earlier. Like, all these plants are getting genetically modified now. That you're like, they're spraying whatever, God knows what on it. It's like, we don't know what that is, and we could be the test dummies,
Yeah.
Like.
And like what you see with regulation is that there's like a curve. So like oftentimes you see innovation out of industry, good or bad, and then a negative effect. And then regulation comes after people have already hurt, like after the damage has already been done.
It's like the seatbelt thing, right?
It's not very often that regulators are so proactive that they're ahead of industry, because industry's constantly innovating and trying to get ahead of and solving market needs. This is business talk, for in case anybody's critiquing my business talk. But it's Betty's Eddies, right? Maryland says no edibles. Market wants edibles. Processors come out with soft lozenges that aren't edibles, but they found just like edibles,
or elixirs, right?
Or like elixirs, I mean, even the tablets, right? Like, I was super surprised in the very beginning when Curio dropped off Awakening tabs.
But yeah, man, that's the funny part. It's like, because we always are looking at the things like COAs, like where it's important for cannabinoids and terpenes, but it's like, this is like some people's livelihoods with some of these hemp farms, like that farm out in Kentucky, like they tested a little hot on their entire crop, and like, that's their livelihood right down the toilet just because of a COA that it wasn't their fault. You know what I mean? They just bought bad genetics and they fell under this parameter that we testing wise kind of screwed them, like that 0.3%.
What do you think about, you want to talk hemp for a second?
Sure, yeah.
What do you think about, have you scrolled through any of the new regs?
I guess the new stuff with more like the testing, like cannabinoids and things like
THC plus THCA, like under 0.3%. Like from what I'm being what I'm being told is this is a starting point that we go to add comments and get the change in regulation to better reflect what the industry standards are. But at that rate, like 80% of what you see on the market is
would make it.
gone.
And it's what we were just talking about. It's like there's going to be this whole like try to change it and get regulations right. We're going to screw the pooch, and then they're going to have to make change because it's just not going to work for the market. And then we'll see change in probably like 2 or 3 years again. You know.
So you've worked with some Maryland hemp farmers, right?
Yep.
Just one or
3 actually. Yep.
And what are you seeing out of those guys?
They're one of those guys tested like great test results actually. Like he's doing craft smokable flower that's over at Woodland Farms, and dude, insane flower. Like truthfully, I could pull up one of my Hollyweed buds and look at him and be like, man, like. But then I got another guy who's just growing indoor stuff, and like it's you got to realize that the market's not going to be set up for things like that. Like I think indoor you'd have to sell clones and things like that, but. Again, like you're gonna have to figure out, is Maryland gonna allow something like that? Because with the cannabis thing, so like we got our license over at Shore, but like we have to produce product, because if we didn't, we'd have to forfeit that license. So where does that hemp line draw, where they're gonna have to put out flower if they have these permits? Meanwhile, because some of these guys are gonna play it safe, they're like, all right, well we're gonna get into like the clone nursery game or something, and so that we don't have to test hot or whatever. A lot of these people are going to find issues with that next year, like a lot of people are testing hot. And so, yeah, like 2 of these farms, they did fine, but I think like...
I went to Fractal Farm, Bob Davis's.
Okay,
and he is the largest farm in Maryland, to my knowledge. He's almost 30 acres.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I was amazed. Like I truthfully was... It seems like it was the perfect storm of good things for the hemp farmers this year. The weather was really good.
Yep.
They didn't have a lot of outside issues. But some of the buds, they're beautiful. Like they're literally gorgeous buds, and I know the Holloways has some stuff that tested up to 13-14% CBD.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see this stuff come into the marketplace. It's just also interesting to see it. Most of them don't know where it's going to go.
No, not at all. Nobody was set up for like drying and harvesting or anything like that. We had people calling me like, "Dude, what do I do?" I'm like, "Get a cubes to go, man. I don't know what to tell you."
But that's the other thing, right? So like, without calling these guys out, like some of the drying and curing practices and procedures that I'm seeing is gross.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's not medical quality. It's not something that I would feel comfortable in smoking that flower. And that was like, no one's got gloves on in any pictures. Like no one's handling, as someone who knows how medicine should be handled, it's not being done like that. And I have a lot of reservations around the smokable flower piece, especially with the lab tests that they're going under. Yeah, like you have a cannabinoid profile, but like you're not showing me anything else that we're checking for our flower. Exactly. If you're going to inhale something, especially an industrial crop that's been grown outside, like I just have a lot of concerns, and I think it'll be interesting to see. What I'm seeing in the market is that a lot of the folks that were scaling to be large processors of the hemp, it's such an abundant of build out, they're all behind.
Sure.
So like I know there's a gentleman in Delaware who is supposed to have the 2 largest extractors in the Delmarva region. But as soon as he went from 1 to 2 in his big plan of there's all this demand out there, so I'm going to go throw 2 in there. Fire marshal goes, what are you doing?
Yeah, like, you can't do this, man.
That's how it works.
We're not set up for this.
So now he's, the anecdotal story that I heard is that person is now 6 months behind. These farmers don't have 6 months.
Yep.
Right? And we know that they're starting to get desperate, and that a lot of these folks... they kind of thought that they were just going to plant it and then it was all going to be sold, and they're kind of looking around going, what to do with it.
Sounded easy.
Right.
So I like concentrated products. I got all that. So I also like this deconstruction idea.
Sure.
So one of the things I was talking to Donnie about was, with all this flower out there, like I wonder if you could get like some fresh frozen like CBD, like high CBD flower, and be able to make some of the concentrated products that we use and almost use it as an additive. So, I have this also whatever THC product that's 80% THC, but I want to cut it with some CBD.
Sure.
I could have some CBD shatter or something like that.
I think that definitely makes sense. The only thing you would run into maybe would be like profitability on that end, because CBD fetches a way different
I was talking to Donnie, like, can we buy a pound or so?
Yeah, we had to note that out.
Yeah.
5, 4.
Yeah.
It's gonna work.
Divide by 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just funny how quick that margin dwindles down as soon as somebody else touches, and especially something like hemp where it's just not nearly as much,
So let's wrap this up a little bit. So do you wanna give any info about Shore Naturals or anything that you wanna?
Pretty much just cranking on, man. Like I was saying last time, we just finished all those big build outs, so we definitely got a lot more product.
What's your lag
cranking out.
time, do you think, before the outdoor stuff hits the market? So you cut it down, there's still a drying curing process, right?
Yeah, so we had actually, a lot of it was actually early crop this year. I had done like a lot of 7 and 8 week crops just to beat the weather. So we actually had harvested a few weeks ago. So I'm waiting on COAs like right now. So if not, we've already kind of gotten some back. So from there, they
soon people in Maryland will start seeing it.
Yep.
Besides us, who are some other dispensaries that you got? Do you even know that information? Or?
Not a whole lot.
I know Charm City Medica seems to get a decent amount of your stuff, right?
Yeah, Charm City. I think Rise gets some stuff from us. Positive Energy.
Who's that?
Over in West Ocean City. yeah.
Never heard of them.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's like, I don't really know everybody that gets our stuff. I don't think we've made it all the way to like Garrett County or anything yet, just because like we try to feed you guys like everything first locally, and before we start sending
we're
it
constantly hammering you guys, and like I appreciate it. I mean,
Big time.
we've been trying to work out some kind of yearly agreement. We can get some kind of guaranteed amount in our facility. I mean, our patients are eating it up as fast as we can put it in there. So you guys please continue to keep on with your quality, and I hope to have you here in another 9 months, 12 months, sit down and talk with us again. It's always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for coming down.
Awesome, man, dude.
A couple quick plugs for us real quick. If you thought this conversation was awesome, you get a chance to meet Cam on December 18th. For those patients that are new to PEH, for the last couple of years, we've done a 12 vendors of Christmas. So from December 5th to the 20th,
Yeah.
we will have basically every day that we're open through that, we will have vendors, different vendors coming in for meet and greets and product specials, and it's always really neat and a great opportunity for our patients. Like, one of the amazing things about the cannabis industry is the fact you get to meet the people that make your medicine. Mm-hmm. It's so unique, it's so different. Like, you never go to like Tylenol and like meet the dude who made like Tylenol, or like,
Thanks for brewing up the syrup.
That personal touch matters so much to the patients. I see it every day when we have a pop-up in-house. Our patients' faces light up when they see you guys, man. So it's really cool.
And that's super important. Like, I really do appreciate you guys doing things like that, you know? Like, that's the benefit of being a small company like we do right now. I'm dropping shirts off after this to some of our guys that are just reaching out. So it's, like, super important to hear that kind of stuff. And we really do appreciate you guys including us in all this kind of stuff, especially me personally. I really do appreciate that.
I'm so proud. Like, there's a lot of similarities in our DNA and, like, how we got started, like, little engines that could here on the Eastern Shore. And I'm so proud that, like, what we do here on the shore, I mean, all of us, like, I mean, we really are rocking right now. Culta and Vario's now got flower for the first time, and it's looking decent, and they have some really cool medical products with a medical focus.
Grow West, I don't know if you guys have tried that TK, that Triangle Kush they put out. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we've had them a couple of times, man. Those guys do a great job.
They
talk
do.
about great terpene profiles too. Good.
Talk about loading up, bro. They will take 6 dudes, throw them in a van, and drive from way far away and come out. They hang out. They had cool T-shirts. They got cool logo. I like their logo.
The bear.
Yeah,
thing,
the bear on it.
Dude, they're super cool, man.
Grow West is all the way the other side of the state, isn't it?
They are, dude. They're super far.
It's like 3-4 hours away. It's probably 4 hours away.
Yep.
Because I remember driving to Deep Creek one time from Salisbury. It's a fucking hike. It's like you get to Frederick and you're like, oh, now we get to drive to Deep Creek.
Like, I'm stopping for a beer. This is a hike.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Cam. I really appreciate it. How do people find you if they want to reach out and follow you on Insta?
Yeah, you can find me at Cabron the Cam on Instagram, or you can follow us at Shore Natural RX to always see what we're kind of putting out and what we're dealing down. And again, I thank you guys so much for the support, man. It's very important to have the Eastern Shore let me know that I'm on their back. So
yeah, man. It's
thank you
community.
guys.
It takes the community.